Hello, it's Andrew. Back with another one of my book reviews. Today it's just see me show here. It's The Binding by Bridget Collins, which I've just finished reading. And I'm making this video to try and share my enthusiasm for what I think is an absolutely brilliant novel. For those of you who've seen my videos before, you know the drill. For anyone who's new to them, I do them all in one take. I say too much, without a script, and I'll just talk about something for a few minutes. So here we go. Actually, oops, reaching down. I say I'm doing without a script. I have been writing myself a few notes about this. So just first of all, to show you the book, which is very beautiful. There's the front cover. There's the spine. There's the rear cover. And if you take the dust jacket off, which I'm doing, basically underneath is the same design. And if you show the edges, it's a bit blue on the screen, but it's actually sort of purple. There's a limited edition with purple edging that I think it's only available at Waterstones. Right, I was in Waterstones and I saw the book and I thought that looks beautiful. There's a great big display of them and I thought that looks a beautiful book. I wonder what it is. Read the blurb and I thought, I'm not sure. It's got some great reviews on the blurb. I thought great recommendations. I'm not sure if it's quite one for me. I'll go away and find out some more about it. So I went away, found out some more about it. So I had rave reviews from lots of people. Thought I'll buy it, so I bought it, and I've been reading it, and it really is an amazing novel. Now, if I go back to the blurb, which is on the inner flap, basically what it's saying, and what I want to do is do a review that conveys how good the book is, but doesn't give too much of the story away. Basically, the story is that there's a chap called Emmett Farmer, who is actually a farmer. He's offered an apprenticeship as a bookbinder, and bookbinding is something that arouses a lot of superstition. He learns a craft where it's not just ordinary bookbinding, but the idea is that if you've got some bad memory, something traumatic's happened to you, then you can go and tell the bookbinder your story. They will put it in a lovely book, nicely bound, keep the book under lock and key, and you will forget the bad memory. So, and he is apprenticed to an old lady who people think is a witch. Now, so it's sort of you could call it supernatural, you could call it magic realism. The book's in 3 parts. I would say the first part is a mystery. The second part is a romance, and the third part is a thriller. It's got so much mixed up in it. There's a lot of great stuff. The prose is brilliant. Some really strong characterization there. Bridget Collins is really good at not just building her characters, but the interaction between the characters and nature. She's lots of telling incidental detail of sort of decor of houses, people's body language, all sorts of stuff. So she creates this brilliant atmosphere. Now, what I would say, I'm going back to the blurb, it does actually, I like a blurb to just tell you, basically, I don't think a blurb should tell you more than sort of the first 10% of the story, and I think that's probably what I've done and what I've just said. But there is a little bit at the end of the blurb that relates to an incident, and as I was reading the book, I kept on thinking, but it's almost as though the story won't properly start until this incident happens, because that will probably set off whatever's going to happen next. And it was bugging me, and it doesn't even happen until about a third of the way through the book, and it doesn't happen in the way it's implied in the blurb it will. So that bugged me a bit. So that's not, I suppose, a flaw of the actual text, but of the the blurbification of the text. That's such a word, which it probably isn't. It's a brilliant mystery, and it's not clear where it's set. The only place that ever really clearly gets mentioned is Castleford, which I assume is Castleford in Yorkshire, but there's not any northern dialect in the book. As for when it was set, the fact that the vast majority of people seem to work in either agriculture, factories, or domestic service, and those who can afford to travel by horse and cart pretty much situates it in the 19th century. There's not anything, though, to situate it any more specifically. I was actually starting to look for clues, and I look at my notes, because I do like things to actually have, although it's obviously a fiction, and in this case it's very much a magic realist fiction, I do like it to be situated in some sort of time frame that you can understand. Just changed my notes around because they're upside down. What I did pick up is, first, now I thought it was late 19th century, basically because I've read some Thomas Hardy, and the agriculture in this book seemed a bit more sophisticated than Thomas Hardy's stuff, so it made me think it was probably set a little bit later than most of Hardy's novels. But there is a reference to the threat of transportation. I've looked, and transportation from basically convicts being sent from Britain to Australia was actually stopped in 1868, so that makes me think, well, was it set back then? There is also a reference to a half-guinea coin, so I thought, well, does that help? But then when I looked, the half-guinea coins ceased to be legal tender in 1816, and I can't believe the book set that far back. On the other hand, one of the characters is seen to think in metric. Now, I don't think many people in 19th century Britain, apart from maybe a few mathematicians and scientists, and again, I've done a little bit of research on this, I don't think any of those people thought in metric. So I think it's either a bit of sloppiness by the author or editor, or we've moved into some parallel universe where apparently it was only in 1965 that, after more than a century of discussion in government circles, that was only intention to actually persuade people to think in metric. Maybe a bit of a digression. Now, so I'm just pausing while I look through my notes to see what I still want to say. As well as being brilliantly written and strong characters, the book also makes you think about themes in the themes. Now, obviously, the book, as I've shown you, sort of the beauty of the presentation of the book, this taps into the idea that in the book, when Emmett Farmer becomes a bookbinder, he's aware there's a lot of superstition around books, which he gradually learns why. But books, there's an element of superstition and an element of fear related to these books, but also there's an element of beauty. There's quite a lot of the people, some of the characters are quite wealthy, some are quite poor, but books seem to be, especially these beautifully bound books, are like a luxury item amongst quite an austere life style for these people. It's like a forbidden treasure, really, a beautifully bound book. Now, the other theme is this idea that you can hide away your bad memories when the process, they call it, is basically you tell your story, it gets bounded in the book, and people call it being bound. There's quite interesting interaction between characters who've been bound and other characters, where the people who've been bound have forgotten important stuff, whereas other people know more what's going on. At one point, when a character says something like, I know more about you than you do. So I think it's playing into this idea of we are character, personality is built through our experience, and almost as though, is it saying you can try and hide away, even forget the bad things, but does that make you less of a person because you've got less understanding of what's happened? You're less able to use that experience to, guide your way in the future. The Sorry, I'm just hesitating again. I say that the whole thing is, the criticism I have come up with are very minor compared with the overall brilliance of the book. It really has gripped me in a way that very few novels have that I've read in recent years. So really highly recommended. One thing I would say, I did mention earlier that sort of the striking descriptions of nature. Now, I like snow, and I like reading about snow and looking at pictures of snow and experiencing real snow, but I think the last 150 pages of this book are all set in a very snowy period, and it's like every page you have to have some reference to snow. I just think he got a little bit over the top, maybe. But the overall atmosphere of mystery and sort of darkness, I will say, there is quite a bit of violence in the book, which I know will trouble some people. Probably some of the descriptions of violence were perhaps a bit more graphic than I would have liked. Sorry, I just lost my thread there. Oh yeah, I was going to build up the atmosphere of the book. I was trying to think how to convey it. Certainly, the first third of the book, it's very difficult. I mean, as a reader, I was thinking, well, where is this set? When is this set? What is going on? What does it all mean? It feels to me like I've mentioned Hardy, and perhaps it's like I've read a few of his books. Perhaps it's because of the agricultural bit that just makes me think it's similar to him. I think because it's set in Yorkshire, naturally people might say it's sort of like Emily Bronte's Wuthering Heights type book. I did see some echoes, or I felt there might be some echoes of Henry James. Is that quite interesting, actually, because many years ago I read a Penguin Books one that put together two of his novellas, The Turn of the Screw and The Aspern Papers. It almost seems to me that basically elements and sort of the atmosphere of both those stories have been sort of like put together into this. And one other thing, which I may be a bit off course here, George Orwell's 1984. It's probably because it's one of my favourite novels, and anything that's very intense, foreboding, it made me think of that in Strange. I'm not saying the author was necessarily influenced by that. I'd be interested actually if I've done a bit of Googling research, Google research, Googling, so I'm not quite sure where the author's influences are, but I just wonder that some of it might be there. There is, it's quite interesting. There's a lot of little clues as to what's going on, and you work out, you try and guess what's happening. I mean, the third part, there is several unexpected twists, and I kept looking at it, I didn't see that coming. And the final, I'll come to the final bit in a minute. There are a couple of, I don't know whether they're red herrings. There's a couple of bits that I feel are a bit unresolved when you read the book. There's a few references to a land dispute between two families like decades ago, which I assume it's going to play some major part in the story later, but it doesn't. There's also some references one of the leading characters makes to his grandmother, which I thought was going to tie in with something else, but it doesn't. The finale of the book, I won't say what happens, but I think it brilliantly symbolises, it really brings the story together in a very gripping and sort of, it's a really good symbolic end to the book. and I've gone on now for the lap timer at the bottom, as I call it. It's told me I've been talking for nearly 15 minutes, which is a lot longer than I thought I would, but I think that's perhaps a credit to how good the book is and how much there is to think about it. So I hope you've enjoyed this. For those of you who have reached the end of this, please, I hope you've enjoyed it. Please put some comments below. I'll be interested to see what people think. Hopefully subscribe to the channel so that you can get other videos from me. Will pop up in your notifications. Thanks for watching, and I shall say goodbye for now. Goodbye.